Hi, I'm Joe Saunders with Miniature Landscape Hobbies. In this video, we're going to continue working with the new Team Yankee Terrain Bundles by Battlefront Miniatures. In this case, we're going to work with the bundle that's known as the Car Care set. This is an awesome kit that has some pretty neat buildings in it. We're going to do what we normally do, and we're going to enhance them with some details. Let's get to it. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is proudly supported by these sponsors. There comes a time in every miniature painter's life where you're overcome by the urge to paint a gas station. And for me, that time is now. Okay, so maybe this is just me, but when the new Car Care Battlefield in a Box Terrain bundle came out, I got that gas station painting urge. So now, there is a service center theme project in my immediate future. The Car Care bundle, which we're covering today, is really just one of the 5 bundles in the new Team Yankee Terrain range that came out recently for the launch of NATO Forces and the impending NATO Forces book. Each of these bundles has a collection of terrain that any 15mm modern era wargamer will want to add to their arsenal. So, what's in the Car Care bundle, you ask? Well, you get a 3-door car garage, a nifty gas station with a carport roof, and it also has removable gas tanks, and finally 2 storage units, a single bay version and a double bay version. The roofs are even removable on the garage and gas station, providing space to put your models inside. Now, this all is a ton of terrain that would look good on any game table. Plus, they come pre-painted, so they're ready to go straight out of the box. I must say, I really like these pieces, and they come well painted. But as always, I feel we can add just a little more to make them an awesome addition to any games table. With this in mind, I'm going to run you through my method for taking these models from good to great, with just a little paint and some simple weathering techniques. Also keep in mind, though I'm applying these techniques to the Car Care bundle specifically, any method I detail here could be used on your own terrain. Let's get started on the job. Do you like free paint? Of course you would. You're a miniature painter. And now could be your lucky day because Miniature Landscape Hobbies is holding a contest. You can win a free Army Painter Most Wanted speed paint set. In order to enter, all you need to do is comment on a post on Miniature Landscape Hobbies pages for Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Share your favorite hobby tip and then enter hashtag MLH to participate. As always with pre-painted terrain, I start by trying to accentuate the levels of contrast. To do this, I mix up brighter versions of each of the dominant building colors and dry brush them over the entire model. Light blue for the garage, a mint green for the gas station, and a light gray, almost white, for the storage units. The roofs looked a little flat too, so these got attention from medium gray, and since these upper surfaces are likely directly exposed to the sun, I push the roof contrast up by adding pure white. I also dry brush the various individual details with gray, then white as well. This will provide an ideally underpainted surface on which to use Army Painter speed paints. I do this in order to keep the job fast, as most speed paints eliminate the need to layer paint and go on in just one coat. The windows are a spot on these models that I think really deserves the lion's share of the work. They come painted black, which is okay, but this leaves out the opportunity to add depth and more color. I start with a gray airbrush spray, focusing heavier at the top of the window frame, and then getting thinner towards the bottom. When this is dry, I then fill in the center of this area with pure white, feathering it out again as I go towards the bottom. Switching to magic blue speed paint, I paint this in thickly over the white and gray underpainting. When it dries, this implies both reflectivity and depth, giving the windows far more visual interest than if they were left just plain black. To finish this off, I put dots of white in the windows, one in the lightest space of each one and one in the darkest space opposite. These really help imply a reflection. Now comes the easy part, blocking in the colors with speed paints. These buildings have a lot of details, and I don't want to bore you by giving a specific play-by-play on what color went where. Instead, I'll just talk about the major accent colors. For the doors in the garage building, I mix 50-50 Nuclear Sunrise and Sand Golem to get a browny orange, which I then apply. For the trim on the gas station, I went with the dark reddish purple of Murder Scene. Remember those small details I dry brushed earlier? I worked on these now too. I put warrior skin on the brown doors and broadsword silver on various window frames and the roof flashing. The major colors and details were now ready, but everything needed to be shaded to bring the bright colors into line, build depth, and downplay the chalkiness of the dry brushed elements. As always, I find the best way to do this is with MIG ammo shaders. So this is exactly what I used. The blue areas on the garage were sprayed with navy gray. I used a piece of cardstock to prevent overspray onto the orange doors and windows where required. Navy gray also worked well on the concrete of the storage units. The gas station was next, and it got treated with light olive drab to deepen the greens. And then after this was dry, everything got a quick spray of the ever so awesomely named Starship Filth. This went near the bottom of each building to add the impression of dirt and grime. Now it's time to line in. This is the process of outlining the details to imply more depth, which also helps draw the eye to key elements. I decided to do this with Grim Black Speed Paint. To make my life easier, I cut it 50-50 with acrylic paint medium, and then added a couple of drops of airbrush flow improver to the mix. When everything flowed freely, I took out a fine brush and began outlining key details such as door frames and windows. This is really a time-consuming process, but it also adds a lot to each finished model, so I just went ahead and worked away at it, and eventually I got through it. The buildings are now mostly done, but everything looks a little too neat and clean, so I need some weathering. In this case, I'll use two methods, sponge chipping and cracking. Both are similar techniques, but yield different, though still very cool results. First up, I do the chipping, which I figure really suits the metal siding on the garage. I get out a piece of packing sponge, tear a jagged chunk off, and dip this in a 50-50 mix of white to sky blue paint. After wicking away the excess paint, I use the sponge to dab it on the siding more or less at random. I use the same technique on the orange doors as well, but with ivory instead of light blue. After all the chips of paint were dry, I took out Hall Red and with a fine brush filled various spots in to imply rust. I figure cracking would be a good weathering effect for the storage units and gas station since the exterior of these buildings appears to be either concrete or stucco. I do this by starting with silver gray. I use this to paint jagged lines in various spots around the windows and door frames. When this is dry, I grab a brown Gundam marker, which is a very fine permanent marker usually used for panel lining on robot models. Here, though, I thought it would work well on buildings, so I drew the darker brown into the silver gray lines to imply deep cracks. Weathering pencils seemed to be a good choice for the next step, so I began applying a number of brown, rust, and mossy tones to each building. I applied these wet. That is, I wet the tip of each pencil, applied the result as a blob or streak to the model surface, and waited for this to dry. After each blob had hardened, I then took a moist paintbrush and either stippled the pencil marks or drew them into downward streaks. And boom! Instant rust, dirt, and moss to add color and wear and tear to each building. This pretty much finished the job, so it's time to add some matte varnish. This is always important, as these buildings will be used for wargaming, and I didn't want my hard work worn away by being handled or hit by flying dice. After 2 coats, this project was done. I was pretty happy with the results, so let's get to the reveal. If you'd like to learn more about working with battlefield-in-a-box buildings, please watch this video. Or if you would like to learn about making 15mm wargaming hills, watch this video instead. Thanks for watching, and as always, remember to keep building life in miniature.